So, quite a while back, we talked about why Fontaine was amazing. Genius even, at least for Genshin standards. And I didn't expect it to be so popular, so thanks for coming and watching. I appreciate every single view that I could get. So anyways, while Fontaine has been incredibly amazing so far, we must now come back to reality and finally address some of the issues. And I know this video is kinda late, but I promised it to so many people and I'd just feel dirty if I didn't release it at all. So that's what we're gonna do, no matter how long it takes. With the help of a number of overly critical internet users in the Genshin community, I am able to compile together a list of problems with Acts 1 and 2. I do try to be as objective and fair as possible, and there's a lot of controversial talking points on the Archon Quest, which you'd probably know if you've been following the discussion. Like, for example, the Traveler's reaction to Linny compared to the Traveler's reaction to Child. In my personal experience, one thing you'll notice after criticizing story writing for a while is that outside of just irrefutable plot holes, a lot of the validity of criticisms are a matter of tolerance. Some people may come up with the most roundabout of excuses to defend bad writing. I think we all agree that things in Genshin could be a lot better, it just comes down to how much those problems bother you. Naturally, if it doesn't bother you as much, you won't be as receptive to the negativity. Seriously, I've had some people put Fontaine as their least favorite Archon Quest for the aforementioned irreconcilable criticisms. I personally have Fontaine as my favorite Archon Quest, but because I want to be fair, I'm still going to go over the grievances I think hold some water. No pun intended. So, long disclaimer aside, let's begin. Whether you love or hate Fontaine's story, you may still get something out of this. We'll go in chronological order. The thief, named Lillian, may have been a smooth criminal with a sleight of hand, but there's one thing that stands out about her that really bothers me. The story goes like this. She said that she stole a ticket to Linny's performance. She then identified herself as Halsey upon entering the theater, who was supposedly a notable painter in Fontaine. Due to the opera Epicles having a reservation system in place, she basically impersonated her to get in and watch the show. And this raises so many questions that I don't even know where to begin, really. Okay, first off, she stole Halsey's ticket. If she stole it from Halsey directly, then she probably also stole her ID, because if not, this just becomes a disappointing game of Among Us when they inevitably meet at the same place. We'll have to make some headcanons here and say she might have stolen it from somebody else, or maybe she was really confident she couldn't be tracked down either during or after the show, or something. As you can see, the cracks in logic are already starting to show. But it gets way worse. Because you're telling me that you stole something, then you got caught by Linny and the Traveler. You managed to successfully escape, but now you're just going to take those tickets and go watch the exact same guy who caught you earlier in the day? There were so many ways this could have gone wrong. Halsey could have just reported a stolen ticket and then it'd be game over. Or Linny could have recognized her because he's a sharp guy, and that would also be game over. Now, none of those things happened, and Halsey might just be out somewhere, or maybe she gave up, or she got dissolved by the culprit's underlings, or something, but we're thinking about this from Lillian's perspective here. Do you really need to risk yourself like that? Like, seriously, I would not care to go to the performance if I were you. You said you've never gotten caught before, right? So why not just use any money you gained through stealing and simply buy a ticket instead? After all, nobody caught you, so you have no criminal record. There's just no reason to take this risk. There are some crazy theories out there about how Lillian was an accomplice of Linny and that this was all just a setup to bait the kidnapper to make a move, but look, as things stand right now, until this gets a proper explanation, this just sticks out in my mind. I don't want to accept that Lillian was just confident that nothing could go wrong. She stole a reservation ticket and practically committed identity theft. This could have blown up in her face in so many different ways. And in my opinion, given the circumstances we're aware of, it just looks like a really dumb move to make. So, next up on our list is... yes, Cowl. This one's quite straightforward, but I didn't notice it at all until somebody brought it up. How in the freaking Phil did he get into the tunnel mid-performance? I mean, this point of criticism is very simple. There's no way into the tunnel besides the two boxes and the vent from the basement, right? This guy, which I presume is Cowl escorting the girl into the box, had no way of entering the tunnel. He couldn't enter from either box because it would involve opening the door. He couldn't sneak into the basement because it would involve leaving the theater. Plus, if he did, he would have run into Linny in the vent. I think if there's any plot hole that's the most obvious, it's this one. When Nouvelette gave the explanation, he specifically spoke of Cowl as the one escorting her into the box in the crowd, which rules out the possibility of Cowl entering the tunnel before the performance. Either that or Nouvelette got it wrong. Like, this just feels so blatantly wrong that I can't think of a good solution for this at all. Somebody messed up for this scene because Cowl just somehow magically teleported down to the tunnel while he was in the audience, and nobody noticed he was missing. Seriously, even if you said that it was pitch dark and nobody could see him entering the box, that's still a stupid move because you're kidnapping/dissolving somebody, and being this close to a large number of people, no matter what angle I try to spin it, it doesn't make much sense. Like, even if you're entering the tunnel in the dark, you still risk being detected because of how close the nearest viewer is to you, and elemental sight is also a thing, so you can't really guarantee that you'll just be able to go in completely undetected. But the story just pretends he managed to find an easy way in, when in reality there just isn't. Like, seriously, you might as well just say he planted a teleport waypoint in there or something. If anybody has an answer to this one, then please, by all means, give it to me, because I don't like seeing plot holes in the story. Now, luckily for us, this next problem is kind of a minor one. It's ultimately inconsequential, but it still leaves something to be desired. This guy, Guard Vaughn, said he discovered primordial seawater inside Linny's possessions. And then he was questioned and immediately sussed out as an accomplice at the end of the case. I suppose you couldn't just plant the evidence and let another guard discover it? Okay, I acknowledge that you'd only do that after the existence of primordial seawater was discovered from Cowl's belongings, so there's not much time left to act, I understand that. If you put yourself in charge to inspect Linny's belongings and that was your chance to plant the seawater vial, then it's possible that nobody else was going to find it because you were the one that was supposed to go through his stuff. But still, how did he get sussed out so quickly? The outing of this guy was so sudden and abrupt and was so lacking in any explanation whatsoever. Maybe it was a hunch. Maybe he was suspicious after Linny was proven innocent, but I would have really liked the game to spend at least 2 to 3 minutes just to explain how Nouvelette and Farina sussed him out. Barely anybody will complain about this one, but I just felt like the plot was moved along a little too abruptly here. Now, the next point is probably by far the most controversial point I'll make in this video, which is saying something. Some people find it okay, but others find it really weird and off-putting. It's the contrast between how the Traveler treats Linny as a Fatui compared to Child. They just don't think it makes sense that the Traveler is so cold and so seemingly hostile to Linny just because he was a Fatui. Meanwhile, there's this guy named Child. We had a fight with him, he unleashed Docile, he's a certified war criminal, and yet we were super friendly with him earlier in Act 1. Now, personally, I get it. I understand the criticism, I also understand the defense. How I interpret this interaction was, well, we've known Child for a long time. Most of our initial encounters with the Fatui are negative, and some of them stay negative for a while. For example, Signora, we really hated her, but for others like Child and Scaramouche, it took a while before we could, at the minimum, tolerate them in any capacity. Even for the Wanderer, we were suspicious of him in the Interdarshan Championship. Or I suppose he mostly just trolled Paimon. I think the main criticism I have here is the lack of clarification on the traveler's complicated feelings. Maybe a line or two about how it's not a good idea to trust someone you barely know, focusing on the circumstances rather than Linny and Lynette's Fatui identity. We trusted somebody so much that we chose to blindly defend them in court despite not knowing them well and getting along too easily. To me, this is more of a character flaw of the Traveler that seems underexplored than, say, any fault of Linny or the Fatui revelation. So, overall, that's all I have for Act 1. Act 1 had a lot of issues, but mostly just issues with logical continuity due to the very large number of variables at play. When you write a story where specific details matter so much, like for a mystery case, it's far harder to make all these factors come together and make sense with each other. However, it was still a thrilling act. The writers knew how to create excitement and drama, but they didn't quite know how to make everything tie together seamlessly. I think that's a fair assessment to make, considering everything I've just gone over. And this is actually where I'm going to end the video. I was going to do both Acts 1 and 2 in one video, but I changed my mind at the end. Due to how long this is, I think it's better if the two acts are separated. It gives both acts the focus they deserve. Act 2 will be addressed in the following video, so look forward to it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.